This is Unique Smiles, the Facial Paralysis Podcast, and I'm your host, Brian April. Welcome to Unique Smiles, the Facial Paralysis Podcast, which are now available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Search Unique Smiles or Facial Paralysis Podcast. My guest today is Christina Robert. She has facial paralysis from Ramsay Hunt Syndrome. And Christina, welcome. Thanks for taking some time today.
Thank you.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your experience with getting Ramsay Hunt Syndrome?
Well, it was a year and a half ago in April, and I just turned 50, which I think is kind of significant because you're supposed to get the shingles virus when you turn 50, and I had not gotten it yet. And I was sick. I thought I had the flu. I'd been sick for over a week, and I was pushing myself, and then I'm driving home, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, my lips don't work right. I can't blink. What's going on? And, obviously the first thing you think is I'm having a stroke, and someone was like, no, I don't think you're having a stroke. So I called a couple of friends and who are nurses, and they said, yeah, it sounds like you've got some sort of palsy. And then by the next time I went to bed, and then the next morning I woke up and the whole right side of my face was paralyzed. And I went to the doctor. And they said, yeah, you have Bell's palsy. So, so they did what they normally do. They give you the steroids, they give you the antivirals. I went home. I was still feeling very, very sick. I felt like I was actually getting worse in some ways. I started having a lot of really horrible facial pain. I was very, very tired, and I just felt horrible for several weeks. I used a lot of ice packs on my face during a couple of days there. I just had really bad facial pain for like 2 or 3 days, and then it went away. So I just put ice packs on me. After a week, nothing's getting better. I'm like, wait a minute, aren't those medicines supposed to make this get better? And I called the doctor and said, shouldn't I be getting more medication? I'm to finish my medication. They're like, no, that's all we can do. And then a couple weeks later, I was still feeling horrible and went back to the doctor, and they said, yeah, this is kind of the way it goes. And then I was actually referred to a local, she's a speech therapist, but she works with people with facial paralysis and gives people exercises for improving facial function. So I started seeing her, and that was very, very helpful because it was someone who actually understood facial paralysis. Whereas in my experience, the general practitioners, doctors, don't really have a deep understanding of it. I also went to see a neurologist, and I didn't find the neurologist to be particularly helpful either.
So they diagnosed you initially with Bell's palsy. Did you have any shingles in the ear or anything like that you could see of that that's usually a marker of Ramsay Hunt?
I had no visible lesions. What I had a sore throat, a very bad sore throat, only on one side of my throat, and it was the same side of my face that I had the paralysis on. I didn't have any sore throat on my left side. So I had a very bad sore throat for the week and a half preceding. But no, I didn't have any visible lesions. They didn't see any lesions.
Were there any balance issues or anything like that, vestibular issues?
Not at the time.
Okay.
No. Right at onset, no. Later, months later, I've even just recently, I started developing some balance issues, and I've gone to see a vestibular therapist for that, and that was very, very helpful. But more later in my recovery, I mean, let me take that back. I was very dizzy, but not vertigo dizzy.
Okay.
I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I need to hold on to the wall dizzy.
Gotcha.
But not like I'm going to fall down or not like I'm having any problems walking. I did not have vertigo. I even said to the doctor, I'm like, why do I feel like I just need to hold on to the wall all the time? And she was like, it's part of your Bell's palsy. So in that sense, I felt woozy. I've always described it more as woozy than dizzy.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Did they give you a particular timeline for which you would be healed or feeling better?
Sure. I mean, especially this, well, I think that, I think the first, and I think he was a licensed nurse practitioner. He said, "Oh, you'll probably be fine within 6 weeks." Of course, 6 weeks came and went, and nothing, very little improvement. The speech therapist said that most people recover within 6 months completely. If you have not fully recovered within 6 months, that you fall within that 5% of people who don't fully recover within 6 months. And then, the recovery will be much slower, much longer, and you're probably never fully recovered. When I reached my, well, it was like by 3 months, I realized I kind of just saw the writing on the wall fairly early on because I was not recovering particularly quickly within the first 3 months.
Gotcha. Did you,
So
how long did it take before you, or have you seen some recovery and improvement in the year and a half?
I actually had some recovery in the first couple of weeks. So I had some movement in my mouth within the first 2 weeks, and then because I went back every couple of weeks to the speech therapist and she tracked my progress. And so I was recovering every consistently starting from very early on, just not, to the point of being fully recovered. So I would say by like 3 months, I was at like 25% or something like that. 6 months, I'm like at 40, 40 to 45%. Now, a year and a half later, I'm at like 75%. I mean, there have been times where it's like, oh, it covered kind of a lot in 1 month, and then the next month it was slower. But there's been a steady, slow improvement over the last year and a half, starting from the beginning.
So, what was your emotional state like during the initial part of recovery?
It was horrible. I felt awful. I mean, I wouldn't say I was very depressed. I forced myself to get out of bed every day. I'm a single mom. She's 10 now. She was 9 then. I was like, I can't let this get me down, even though I really wanted to let it get me down. And my mental health and emotional health is really important to me. So even though I felt horrible and all I wanted to do was do nothing, I just like, you know what, you're going to get out of bed, you're going to take a shower, you're going to make the rest of you look good because your face looks terrible. So I stopped wearing my typical take my daughter to school clothes, which was pajamas because I was self-employed. And I'm like, no more pajamas, no more pajamas on the trip to school, because otherwise people are going to be like, what truck ran that lady over,
Right.
So I made the rest of myself look decent, even though inside I felt horrible and I thought my face looked horrible. So that's what I did. So when I'm feeling good, I don't shower every day. When I had Bell's palsy, the sudden onset, I was like, I'm showering every day
Yeah.
because I got to look good.
Absolutely.
So, and I combed my hair. So, and like now my hair is a mess, which shows me that I must be feeling better because I don't care anymore. It was tough. There were a lot of tears, especially towards 3, 4 months where I was like, I am not gonna ever recover from this. And that's really sad, and I went through a grieving period where I was like, my face isn't my face. It's these pictures. I had a hard time looking at pictures of myself. I'm sure that's very common. I was like, oh my God, I was so pretty before, and now look at me. I look horrible. So it was tough. It was really, really tough. But
How did your daughter react to it?
she was fine. She was fine. She just kind of took it all in stride, and sometimes, it was harder to deal with a lot of stress at the time. So if other things started to stress me out, I would have to remind people. I'd be like, look at my face, look at what I'm dealing with, and tell me, do I need to really be handling this as well? And they'd be like, no, you're right. So because it's like 3 full-time jobs just dealing with the emotional and physical aspects of this
Absolutely.
thing, and people don't understand it, and the energy, especially with Ramsay Hunt. And this is what the things they don't tell you is what's frustrating. For instance, I went to the neurologist. I said, well, what about all this fatigue? Like, why am I so tired? And he's like, well, maybe you have chronic fatigue syndrome. Go talk to your doctor. And it's like, no, that was completely 100% related to my Ramsay Hunt syndrome. And the fatigue, even I would go on the Facebook pages, is anyone else still tired like a year later? And this really helped me. Someone said I didn't fully feel myself until about 2 years later. And
Wow.
I am coming up on 2 years. It'll be 2 years in April. And I as well am just starting to feel like back to my normal
Oh,
self.
that's good.
It's like the get through everyday
Yes.
fatigue, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God,
Yeah,
what in the heck?
it's pretty crazy, and thankfully it's
It
not as
is.
frequent and as hard as it was in the beginning. But
Right.
there was
Your
definitely
face
days.
gets tired.
Yes.
People don't understand. It's 6 o'clock at night. I'm sitting, and talking to my therapist, and she's like, what's the matter? And I'm like, I'm tired. My face is tired. This has to do with my face. And she's like, no, your face looks fine. I'm like, you don't get
Yeah.
it. I always say, I feel like my face is gonna fall off. Yeah.
What were the biggest challenges physically early on with the facial paralysis?
Well, the fatigue for me was number one. I mean, I don't know how people work. I mean, well, obviously the first week or two where you just are like, you can't, at least for me, I could not
Right.
get up off the couch. I mean, I didn't want to get off the couch. I was like, this is what I need to be doing right now is I just need to be laying here. And then the pain. So that was very, very cute, and I think, but even after that, the first, 3 to 6 months at least, just the incredible fatigue and not being able to do my daily like the work that I was doing for myself. I just had to cut way, way, way back. So I would work like 1 or 2 hours a day because I worked directly with people and being able to do things on my computer. I mean, I couldn't blink,
Right.
for 6 months. I couldn't blink completely. So, using the computer, doing reading, talking to people, meeting with people. I put all of that on hold for like a month. And then after a month, I very, very slowly started building it back up again. And I actually just took a full-time job after being self-employed. I took a full-time job in May. And when I started working there, I mean, even between May and now, I can see improvement. Because when I first started there, I was like feeling like I had to tell people about my face and feeling like the fatigue is affecting my ability to be at work 100%. And now, 6 months later, like I feel a lot better than I did even 6 months ago. So I think it's been very slow and very gradual in terms of developing that stamina and the ability to be able to work hard, to be able to work, several hours a day.
Absolutely. That's why I try to do 15 to 45 minutes a night. That's all. That's what I do.
There you go.
Um,
That's
that's my gig.
your work grind.
Yep. I guess that's one of the things I've always found really interesting is, like you said, not a lot of people understand the things that there are these other aspects of it, like the constantly taking care of your eye when it won't blink, and having to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you have some sort of glasses or protection or goggles, or when you go outside, and
Mm-hmm.
just the
Mm-hmm.
eye patches and the tape and drops and all of that stuff. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot. It's a lot for people.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
So
Mm-hmm.
you sound like you're in a pretty good place with it right now. What helped you get to that spot or accept it? Did you have any sort of aha
Um,
moments?
well, to be honest, I started going to physical therapist, a different physical therapist in Rockville, Maryland, the Center for Facial Recovery. When I started going there a year ago, and when I first started going there, I was having a lot of ear pressure. So my ear was constantly pressure, like, when you feel like you have to, like, if you're on an airplane and your ear pressurizes and you have to, like, release it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have that all the time. It's like I would release it, I would clear it, and then it would repressurize. Clear it, repressurize it. Oh my God, it was driving me crazy. And I was pretty miserable. And that was the big reason I was miserable was because of this ear pressure. And I started going to the physical therapists in Rockville, and they started working on my face manually. So they like doing a lot of, the stretching, and they use laser and they use ultrasound, la la la. They they were instrumental. I think they were instrumental in me feeling better, feeling physically better. And as I felt physically better, I have my emotional betterness has kind of followed.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to feel emotionally good when you're physically miserable.
Right.
And it wasn't like pain, like, oh my God, I'm in pain, or this is so awful. It's just like constant, just annoying. And gosh, getting rid of that has made my life so much better. And just continuing to see the slow improvement. So yes, I think I'm at a point now where it's like, if I don't get any better, I'll be okay. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm not miserable. I'm not like spitting on people all the time. You know, I'm not drooling
Yep.
when I talk, which I still have a little bit of that. The corner of my mouth is not great, but I'm much more comfortable. And that's huge. And beyond that, it's like, okay, I don't look as horrible in pictures as I used to. I can blink, which is great. Um, and sometimes sometimes I read, I go back on Facebook and look at things, and it's like, I don't want to think about it all the time. I don't want to be reminded of it all the time.
Right.
And, if I can go through the day and, I don't have to explain myself anymore, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's there if I want to tell people about it, but it's not like I have to because otherwise they're going to wonder like, why is she so tired in the middle of the day or whatever. Um, so and people don't notice it when I right away meet people. If I say, "Oh yeah, I have facial paralysis," and then I smile and then I can point it out to them, for sure they can notice because there's lots of things. And even having the reduction in the synkinesis through getting the physical therapy that I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
has really helped me feel better.
Yep.
And sometimes I read on the forums, people are like, "Oh my God, I have chronic headaches," or "My neck is always tight," or how do I get rid of this in kinesis? And like my immediate reaction is like, go get some physical therapy because there are physical therapists out there who will work on your face. And that's one of the things I was like, when I started getting my face worked out, I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been needing for a year and a half. Like I finally felt like, oh, there's someone who can actually work on my face that knows what they're doing. That
Right.
was big for me,
Well, that's great. I'm
you
glad
know?
that worked for you. There's so many. There are other options as well. Physical therapy is a wonderful one. I know I went through that, and it helped to a point, and then I had to start doing Botox for my synkinesis, and even still, that's not
Mm-hmm.
enough. And so I'm actually looking at getting the selective neurolysis surgery to help with that
Mm-hmm.
because mine is a pretty severe case, but those are some
Mm-hmm.
other options out there as well. But definitely
Sure.
get out and be your own advocate and try to
That's
find
for
what's
sure.
gonna
That is for sure. Yeah.
find what's gonna work
I
for you
mean,
and help.
yes. I mean, to me, it's like I'll try anything if there's a possibility it will help.
Mm-hmm.
You try it and it doesn't work, then you don't have to do it anymore, you know? But yeah,
Yeah, some people
it's not
swear.
going to fix itself over time,
No,
you know?
no, it won't. And some people will swear by one thing and not by the other, and it's everyone's different in how it all responds. So just like we were saying, just be your own advocate. Try whatever you can to make it
Mm-hmm.
work, but just make sure you're going through credible sources and people who know what they're talking about and what they're doing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
also very
Yes.
important as well. You kind of touched on it a little bit. What are there any misconceptions people have of you because of your facial paralysis?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Mm-mm.
Some people will say, "Oh, that
Um,
they always look drunk, or they look mean, or they look
oh.
angry, or that sort of thing." So,
When
or
people walk towards me and they give me a big smile, I'm always kind of sad that I can't give them the same smile that not, I mean, it doesn't get me down or anything, but I'm like, oh, bummer, I can't give them a big smile. But you know what? I do my best. I give them the closed mouth smile and I make my face look happy and I'm like, oh, they know I'm smiling at them. It might not be, I had one person say, and seriously, and one person in like the last year and a half said, oh, why aren't you smiling? And this was like a year ago. And I was like, if you only knew. I would be happy to tell you about it, but I'm at the McDonald's drive-through.
exactly.
So, um, so no, I mean, and this is one of the things that the speech therapist lady said, and it's true. It's like we smile with our eyes.
Right.
And I mean, and if you look at me, my neutral face is very normal. And I just go into a smile on my one side, you know.
I
Like
don't.
it still shows that I'm happy.
I
So no,
totally
I
get
don't
it.
think I have any negative perceptions of me. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I know. Because I've asked that question a lot, and one piece of advice that someone had said is they will wave because they can't smile
Oh,
back. So they wave to be
uh-huh.
And that's just another visual cue for the person
Right.
receiving it that they're being friendly instead of
Right.
trying to smile and not. So that just put that out there
Right.
for.
Or you can give like a little eye squint, a little
Hmm.
half smile eye squint, and people know. Yeah,
Absolutely.
waves are good too.
How did facial paralysis affect your relationships, whether it's friends, family, partners, that sort of thing? At least early
Hmm.
on.
I don't know that it really did. I didn't, one thing is I didn't want people feeling sorry for me. Not that it didn't affect my relationships, but for instance, the director at our school, I passed her every day and she's a very quiet, very nice person. And I'd look at her and I'd be embarrassed. I'd be like, I don't want her to be looking at me, studying my face, see if I can get any better, because I wasn't getting any better. You know what I mean? I don't want people to feel sorry for me.
Right.
But I don't think it affected it. It didn't affect my relationships or my friendships or my relationship to my child. I mean, I think in some ways, like we mentioned earlier, it gave me a little leeway because my daughter's a talker. She's a huge talker. And then she'd ask me lots and lots and lots of questions, and my face would get tired, my mouth would get tired, and it would, early on, it would get tired very quickly. And sometimes I still do it. So I would just close my mouth and I would circle my finger around my mouth and I would be like, mm-mm, can't talk, can't talk. So they got me out of talking. It
Yep.
got me out of, I was like, and then I would say, Mommy, Mom has a facial. Remember I have Bell's palsy? Or, I would use it every now and then. I'd be like, well, I have facial paralysis, so la 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 la. But, I mean, overall, it didn't really affect my relationships.
Okay,
I
great.
mean, yeah,
That's great. I
no.
know some people just turn into complete shut-ins and couples.
Shut-ins, they
Yes,
turn,
they turn into shut-ins. They don't go out. They don't socialize anymore. There's been people who have
oh,
split up,
yeah.
gotten
I mean,
divorced, and all that sort of thing. So
oh
it's
my gosh,
yeah,
really?
it's
Oh, geez, Louise.
so
I mean, I
that's
wasn't in a
great.
romantic relationship, but I would hope that any partner that I would have would be able to tolerate it. Um,
You would hope.
it, yeah, I, it's hard to remember, but I was very, very determined that I'm not going to let this stop me, from living my life the way that I would normally live it. So I just, like I said, I really had to force myself because I had to walk my daughter into school because that's what we did. I mean, I guess I really didn't have a choice, because we had to walk our child to school every day. So I had to pass lots of people every single day on the way in and on the way out. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stand tall and I'm just going to do what I need to do and, let people think what they will. And I mean, not that people were thinking negatively things, like more, like I said, it was more like feeling sorry for me. But I didn't let it stop me from being social. If I want to go do something, I'm going to go do it. I'm not going to hide.
That's great.
So
That's great to hear. So I guess my last question: what advice do you have for people who recently acquired facial paralysis?
find out what is really going on. I mean, if you need to go get a second opinion or a third opinion, if I had not gone back to the doctor the second time, I would not have gotten a referral to the speech therapist because we had a whole facial paralysis team in my city that the first doctor that I went to did not tell me about. So I would say keep going, keep talking to people, ask, are there any specialists? Is there anyone in the city that specializes in facial paralysis? I would say Google facial paralysis and your city because there might be resources out there that you're not aware of. And the more information you have, the better you're going to feel about your recovery just because you're going to understand it better. Going home, getting sent home when you have had no, didn't even know this was a thing, and sitting at home and wondering, why am I in pain? Why am I so tired? When's this going to go away? Is really, really, really tough. So I would say go back. Even if they say, here, take the medicine, that's all we can do for you. Go back to somebody else. Look for resources in your community. If you can't find them in your community, go on Facebook and say, does anybody know of any resources close to me? I mean, I fly from Minneapolis to DC for my physical therapy because I don't like what they have to offer. Now, there's good things about it, but it wasn't enough for me.
Right.
If you live in a rural area and you're close to Chicago or you're close to, wherever, go to the big city and see what they've got going there because the resources are limited, but they're out there if you look for them. And they might not necessarily be able to make you better, but at least it's someone saying, hey, I've seen other people go through this and you're going to be okay. Because otherwise you're sitting there with that in your own head, in your own mind, and you're going to think the worst, you know? And there is
Absolutely.
hope. You're going to get, and most people get better, but you want to understand, especially if it's Ramsay Hunt versus Bell's palsy. Like I didn't find out that it was Ramsay Hunt until, I started going to Rockville a year ago. Like nobody mentioned, Ramsay Hunt to me, not one person.
That's insane.
And knowing that has been very, very helpful. It's like, oh, that explains the fatigue. That explains these other symptoms. That explains this, that, and that, and the other, rather than just thinking, oh, I'm one of those people that didn't get better. So I think understanding the difference between those two, especially if you didn't have lesions, you know, but people kind of know that if you're one of those people that isn't better within 6 months and it isn't a brain tumor or some other, medical condition, then it probably is Ramsay Hunt. And what does that mean? And what does that mean in terms of recovery and having the more information you can get? I think that better equipped you are to at least understand it, if not treat it.
Well, that's awesome. That's great advice.
So that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us today, Christina, and really appreciate it.